Yeah.
Yes, it is, but we are now live.
Perfect. So we'll commence the proceedings. Kia ora tātou, tēnā koutou katoa. I'm Brendan Duffy, Chair of the Local Government Commission, and just to set the scene, I think is really important. We want to acknowledge mana whenua of the rohi that we're considering today. We acknowledge the iwi and hapu of this land. We also acknowledge that we're entering your space, albeit virtually, and you've seen how technology's worked just in the first 7 minutes this morning. But we would like to open and offer our karakia as we commence our proceedings for today. And the Commission has its own karakia, and I'll take us through that. Whakataka hau ki te uru, whakataka hau ki te tonga, kia makina kina ki uta, kia matarata kia tai, kia ha aki ana te atakura, kia tio, ki huka, heihu, tihei, moriora.
Moriora.
It may be that Melanie or Luke may want to respond, and we respect that.
Kaya koe e ruka.
Ai. Nā reira tēnā tātou katoa. Tuatahi ka tuku mihi ki tununga rawa, moana manaakitanga nāna I whakatau kei rungi a tātou. I tēnei rā, kia whakarangatira ke tōne ngoi ngā wā katoa. Nā reira mihuri anō ki o mātou whakaro, o koutou mō mātou aroha, kia rātou ko ngaroa tiki tuotarai. I ngā mate, haere atira, ngā mate whakatau mana nei a tātou katoa, kei rungi I tēnei ipurangi, me ngā mea e mātakitaki mai kei tēnā kāinga, kei tēnā kāinga. Nā reira ngā mate haere atira, rātau ki te pō, tātou ki tau mārama, tātou kia tātou a tēnā tātou. Nā reira e mihi atana, kia koutou, kia koe Brendan, nau I tūwhera tō tātou nei hui, I raru I te manaaki tangu tātua, tēnā no ki kia koe. Nau I whakawātia tu hurei mo tātou I tēnei rā. Tēnā no ki kia koutou katoa, no te mana kaumana tanga arohe. Nā kia koutou katoa nā, kua mori mai o koutou nei mōheotanga nei hei whakanui te kaupapa nei I tēnei wā. Me huri anō hoki, me mihi anō rā kia koe Rachel, te koromatua. Tēnei anō ki ngā mihi kia koe, nā kua whakamana tō tātou nei hui I tēnei rā. Ngā mihi anō hoki ki ngā kaunihera o whakatū katoa. Nā kua tai mai nei, ko mātou nei o ngā mana whenua, e ono nei, e tuku atu ngā mihi kia koutou katoa I tēnei wā. Nā reira kore kumero rawa tia ngā kōrero, e tika anu ko nā utarauro, nā mātou tarauro, ko ora I te tangata. Nā reira tēnā koutou, a tēnā tātou katoa.
E honore he gloria mga rongo ki te whenua whakaro pai e ki ngā tangata katoa ake Amene, he atua te piringa, tōku oranga.
Nā reira tēnā tātou. Back to you, Brendan.
Kia ora, Luke and Melanie, thank you so much for your introductions and welcome to what I think we all appreciate as a significant part of local government, the purest principles of democracy, and it's lovely to be welcomed as you have this morning. Kia ora. The next part of the introductions is to recognise all of us on the screen. I'd like first, though, to ask my fellow commissioners to introduce themselves. They won't be known to all of you, but for some of you, you may recognise So Janie, can you introduce yourself next, and then we'll go to Sue.
Ata Marie, wonderful to be with you this morning. Janie Inia, I've been a commissioner for 7 years now, and I've had 18 years experience in local government, 9 as mayor of the Timaru district. Thank you.
Kia ora koutou. I'm Sue Piper. I'm a Wellingtonian, and I've been in and around local government now for a little over 30 years. So good to meet you.
Thank you, Sue. And my history is similar to Janie's, 21 years in local government, 12 years as mayor of the Port of Whenua, previous time as a councillor and deputy mayor, a bit of time on National Council and a few other things around the traps. So I recognise Pat, who was a CEO in a neighbouring council in Kapiti for a long, long time. So we know each other well, and I recognise Mayor Rachel from those days when I was in local government. So that's the commissioners. The team from the commission today, we can only see our CEO, Penny Langley, at the moment. And I think some of you will know Donald Rezabos, who has been in local government almost forever. And he's responsible for this paper today and the piece of work in the deliberations that we're undertaking. So that's us from our side of the fence. Mayor Rachel, just pass to you for your introductions, and then we'll get into the proceedings.
Aina mana ina raurangatira mā tīna koutou katoa. He mihi nui kia koutou te mana kawanatanga a rohi. No mai haere mai o te rohi o whakatū. Tēnā koe Brendan, tēnā koe Kamatua Mel, tēnā koe Kamatua Ruka. Tina koutou katoa. Welcome. I welcome you to our virtual rohi today. I want to acknowledge those who are here supporting me today, and mahi of the Commission and also of the Council, and working through what is such a critically important part of local democracy, and that is at the heart of it is representation. I acknowledge our mana whenua and the support I have today from our kamatua. We come together in these really critical decisions because we are both together, working together on behalf of the community of Whakatū. We respect the process that we are participating in today, and we acknowledge Nelson Citizens Alliance, who have come to the Commission for your consideration about the representation model that we have selected as a council, and we're happy to participate in these proceedings. Matua Brendan, I want to kaitoko your comments around the real importance and the heart of what we're doing here, and say to you that we're coming today to use our best endeavours to provide the information that the Commission needs for its decision making. So welcome, and thank you for being here. As the Mayor is ko Rachel Rees tokuinga, ko rau te koro mātua Whakatū. As the Mayor of Whakatū, I look forward to today's proceedings, and we are here to help the Commission as best we can. Nō reira, tīnā koutou katoa. I'm supported today by many beautiful faces, and when it's appropriate, Matua Brendan, I'll leave you to invite their introductions.
Now is very appropriate.
Kia ora, if I hand perhaps to our Deputy Mayor.
Morena everyone, ko Judine Edgar. I'm Deputy Mayor of Nelson City Council. This is my 4th term on council, albeit my previous 3 were on our neighbouring Tasman District Council. So I have had quite an amount of dealings with the Local Government Commission over the years with various representation reviews, and understand both the importance of it, but also the feelings that it can engender in the community, both both positive, looking at the opportunities, but also some uncertainties. So I'm certainly privileged to be here today and to join in the mahi and to help support you in any way possible with your decision making. Thank you.
Kia ora.
Kia ora, and I'll invite our Chief Executive, Pat Doherty, to introduce, and then he'll pass on to the staff team.
Morena, ko Pat Doherty toko ingoa. I'm Chief Executive of the Nelson City Council. Held that role for just over the last 4 years. And prior to that, I was Chief Executive of the Kapiti Coast District Council. And I won't go into my history of local government before that. And I'll hand over to Nikki McDonald. Thank you.
Kia ora koutou, ko Nikki McDonald toko ingoa. I am the Group Manager of Strategy and Communications at Nelson City Council. So it's my group who have been providing advice to Council on the representation review. But most of that work has been done by Devi, and I will hand on to her now.
Kia ora koutou, ko Devora Nikoata-Smith, toko ingoa. I am the Manager Governance and Support Services for Nelson City Council, and I've been involved in supporting the elected members and our senior leadership in the procedural side of the representation review over the last year or so. Thank you.
Kia ora koutou, and our kamatua, I have introduced themselves, but most welcome to speak again if you wish, Melanie and Ruka.
Tēnā tātou e huhu mai I tēnei ata. Ngā mihi atu ki a koe te koromatua, mō tō mihi tēnei ata ki a koe hoki te rangatira o tera atu taha. Ko manga tapu te maunga, ko mai tahi te awa, ko aurere te moana, ko whakatū te whenua, ko kākati te tupuna whare o tō tātou marae I whakatū. Nō reira, tēnā koutou katoa. Melanie is my name and I hail from Ngāti Koata. I'm representing all the iwi from this rohe on the council. So thank you very much for your welcome. Ngā mihi atu. Kia koe Ruka.
Tēnā mihi tātou. Ngā mihi anō. My name is Luke Katu. I'm from Ngāti Rārua, Ngāti Tuarangatira, Ngāti Koata, Te Atiawa, E Te Ho, some of the iwi of the top of the South Island here. My maunga is Tokomaru. Wairau is the marae. Wairau also is the awa. Wa tātou tūpuna. Nā reira, tēnā tātou.
Ka rongo nā I roto nei me he tai tākare. E akina ki te rai o tū ke iwa ho. Ko te tomo atu koe te hono ki wairua. Hine I te kupu mana o te arai inoi. Kia hoki mai a e te waiora ki te iwi e. Kia ora.
Kia ora, kia ora koutou. And just in handing back, Brendan, I just want to acknowledge Melanie's marae is Whakatū, and I sit on the Whakatū Marae Committee. That's a recognition of the strength of relationship that exists between mana whenua and the Konihira of Whakatū, and I just want to acknowledge our marae. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Right, okay, so I think we can proceed now to the content of the deliberations today, where you have the opportunity, Mayor Rachel and your team, to present your perspectives. There'll be occasions where at the end where commissioners may wish to ask questions or points of clarity. We'll then take the presentations from the representatives from the Nelson Citizens Association and Citizens Alliance. During their presentation, there may be questions or points of clarity that will identify that you may be able to pick up in your right of reply, and then we'll be able to conclude the proceedings and go from there. Now, the only other point is that because we are virtual, there'll be occasions where you might suspect the commissioners are asleep because our heads are down. It's not that, we're taking notes. It's a very disrespectful process in some ways, but it's the only way with obviously under this model. So if you do see us with our heads down, it's not because we're not interested. Right, we're into it. Your call.
Tina koutou katoa, ko Rachel Reese toku ingoa, koro te koro mātua whakatū, anu mahare mai. Welcome, my name is Rachel Reese. I'm the Mayor of Nelson City Council, supported today by my Deputy Mayor, the Chief Executive, and a very capable staff team who are here to provide in detail that the Commission may need in making your determination. I want to acknowledge the importance of the representation review and decision-making process. There are many parts to that process, and it involves developing the proposal. And in our case, that involved establishing a Māori ward, which was strongly supported by iwi and the council and many in the community, but I will acknowledge not all. We then go through, after establishing our Māori ward and through our representation review process, we start to test our proposal. And I'm confident through that process that we were very well informed with the advice that the elected members understood the process that they were undertaking, and the quality of information that was provided to us was of a high standard. The proposal was then prepared and the information distributed to support the review and the proposal. And we settled on the proposal that we wish to consult on. We have engaged with the community and consulted with our community. We have considered the views of the community. What we did not consider is a re-debate on the Māori ward. And it's fair to say that several submitters attempted a re-debate. I would note in that I do not agree with views expressed in the appeal documents that I've seen from the appeal applicant or appellant in relation to the Māori representation considerations. They're not the considerations that Nelson City Council applied when establishing a Māori ward. We made a final decision, and now the opportunity to appeal that decision is available, and that has been exercised by one of our submitters, and we respect that right. If there are questions in relation to the procedural matters on how we went about our decision making or the preparation stages, then I will defer to our officers to speak to those matters if you have any particular questions. But as I said, I'm satisfied that all of the steps were addressed appropriately. In making the decision, there was robust debate. And I think it's important on this issue that there was robust debate, that the views of the community and from the submitters were actively considered at the table. And it was very important to me as Mayor that we did just that. It was important that we turned our minds to those submissions and we tested the preferences and tested our proposal. The preference of the submitter, now the appellant, was very well tested. In essence, I could say that the decision making was one that revolved around a consideration of either less complexity or more continuity. And in saying that, there are a number of factors that were considered, but the issue that was in play through the debate was one of whether we retained elected at large elected members and how we approached that. Nelson City Council has been fully elected at large council for the entire time that I've been involved in local government, which is now coming on to 15 years. And I think from the establishment point, and the history will be better known by the Commission than perhaps by myself, but for a very long time, if not from the beginning, it's a method that is really familiar to people. And when the elected members debated this issue, there was a view around continuity. People in Nelson have been used to the opportunity to, if they so choose, tick the box, tick 13 names. Now we're making things quite different this time round, because if they tick the box, they're going to have an invalid vote for this year's election, as we're moving to STV voting as well. And so it's quite a big change for the city in the voting methodology. And that was part of the debate that we had in coming to a decision. Do we make it a little bit simpler by having just wards, or do we maintain some continuity with elected at large? I think it's fair to say that there's no right answer in coming up with a representation model. There's no necessarily consistency across the country, and it has to come to, on balance, what system the elected members finally settle on that is valid under the legislative requirements. I would note that in turning my mind to the options, I did consider consistency, and that happened to align with the proposal that was preferred by Nelson Citizens Alliance. I'm not sure that it was preferred by me for the same reasons that it might have been promoted by Nelson Citizens Alliance. And in fact, I could say probably not in all accounts. One of the issues that I did take into consideration was consistency with Tasman District Council and the ease of transitioning should we advance to one council in the future. My views on that future position are reasonably well known and would only strengthen if the Three Waters reform proposal was to proceed into legislation. I'm very conscious that the Commission is clearly not able to consider such matters today, that the remit does not extend to considering the representation arrangements in the future, or perhaps the change in our system that may occur if our communities decided to proceed to one council. It may be that in your view, it is something that I should not have considered in the process at the time, but I can tell you that that was a factor that I was thinking about as to the future for local government in our region, and whether having a fully ward-based system would actually make, if that proposal was to be part of the future for local government, would make the system easier. Other elected members focus very much on the next election and the transitioning process from coming off elected at large and into a ward process, and decided that the balance was to retain some elected at large seats while establishing wards as well. I've reviewed, as I said, the material that's been provided to you for consideration by Nelson Citizens Alliance, and I do want to comment that I don't see any direct advantage or disadvantage in relation to current elected members versus new candidates from the decision to retain elected at large seats. I also would say that in reading the commentary in relation to party affiliation and considering the appeal, I do not see the relevance of whether councillors or a mayor stands under a political party affiliation. That's a legitimate option for candidates regardless of the representation arrangements, and I don't see that having any material influence on the retention of elected at large seats. So on the day, the majority view was retention of some elected at large seats and wards, and I see no reason to overturn that decision. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mayor Rachel. Just need to check in with fellow commissioners as to any questions that arise from what's been articulated and beyond what we've already read. Commissioner Anea.
Thanks, Brendan. I was just wondering, you mentioned that you are STV, and that's just a recent decision by your council?
Yes, it is, Commissioner. We have made that decision as part of our representation review. We were due to do a representation review, and we've decided to move to that system. Marlborough has that system, Tasman do not. So there's a mixed model in Te Tauihu.
I just noticed that in a lot of other communities that have got STV, they actually have at large. So it's quite interesting that you moved to STV, but then you've moved also to a part ward system.
Yes, we have, and that's because we established our Māori ward, and in the process of establishing the Māori ward, we then had to consider the representation arrangements. And so that was the step that we needed to take. I think there was also some call from the community. It was very interesting reading the submissions that we did have. But and beyond that, the conversations that I would have with my community when we're undertaking a representation process, and there actually is a strong desire for award system. And it's fair to say that some of our communities perhaps don't feel as well represented as they would like to be with our current elected at large model. And I would use the example of the area of Stoke in Nelson, which is a very large area, in fact, our largest population base. At the moment, there are no, to the best of my knowledge, unless somebody's moved house, we've got no elected members who live within that suburb. And so we were getting those messages, certainly about the value of awards.
Thank you.
Commissioner Piper?
Thanks, Chair. No, you've answered my question in your presentation, so thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'll just check with my officers to see if there's anything that they think is important for the Commission to be advised of at this stage. Is there any material that the officers would like to present as part of our opening? No, they're giving me shaking heads.
They're all shaking their heads. They think you've done such a great job. I'm just bear with me. I'm just double checking my notes here. I think we're covered, but I just want to make very sure. Yep. There's nothing in the. Oh, Commissioner Anea?
Just one little quick question. To what extent was maximising the number of councillor voters on the Māori electoral roll and who they can vote for a factor in the council decision making?
Look, that's a really good question. And I think there were two things to consider. One around proportionality, and actually the proportionality was slightly better in the 4-ward option, but only slightly. And if the officers, if I haven't got this correct, they'll put their signal with their hand up. But actually, when it came to the absolute number, there was some thinking around the table that actually, because Nelsonians have been used to the opportunity to vote for 13 people, for everybody, keeping the number higher was a better option. So had we gone to the 4-ward option, it would have been 2 votes if you're on a Māori ward. There would have been 4 votes if you were in one of the other wards. But proportionally, that was slightly better. But in absolute numbers, it was a reduction. And so there's a bit of a test around that. So I think as part of the transition of the elected at large role, or option, that was one of the factors that was considered. It allows the opportunity for everyone to have more people to vote for, and potentially that generates more interest in the election. Commissioner, I think one of the things that you and I will both know, having been involved in many elections, is that while we might think that people vote 13 times, a lot of people don't. They maybe vote 3 or 4 times, even if they've got 13 opportunities.
Kia ora, thank you.
So just to round this out before we move to the appellants, is it reasonable to observe that you and your council believe that which you have proposed is genuinely supported by the majority of individuals who chose to participate in any commentary through the review?
I'm going to defer to the officers because they will have the analysis. So if that's right, Mr. Chair, I'll just hand that to the officers because they will have the analysis with you.
Yeah. So who's going to Devora's going to do that?
Devora will do that.
Yeah.
Kia ora. Sorry, just bringing up my reference notes to refer back to the submissions on our initial proposals. So with thanks to you all, we had a total of 21 submissions to our initial proposal. Of those, as the Mayor has touched on already, 7 made no specific recommendations in relation to the initial proposal, so they were more interested in the Māori ward, which is obviously out of scope for these discussions. 6 supported the initial proposal as is. 8 made various objections, but the objections were diverse. So 6 was actually the largest number, the largest group within the 21 that were specific to representation issues, and they were all in support of the initial proposal.
Okay. Thanks for that point of clarity. I think that we're done there in terms of the questions that the commissioners have. And so what we'll do now, I'm just going to check how we're going for time. This will be the first hearing where we were ahead of time. I can't believe it. Quite extraordinary. You deserve a medal somehow. I'm just hold on screen. Where's Penny? There she is. Penny, where are we? How are we?
We are good. We have our appellant here ready to go. So I'll bring Murray in, and I believe that Neville will be with Murray.
Perfect.
And Murray has been watching for a wee while, so should know generally the lay of the land. Lovely. All right, so that looks promising. Murray has joined us in the meeting, and when you're ready, if you can take yourself off mute and pop the video on if that's an option.
Yep, with you.
All right, Murray. So we've got both of you together there.
Yep.
Brilliant, fantastic, and you've been observing the process so far, so you're all crystal clear. Look, can I just need to make one point of clarity before you start, because it is on the public record, where you've identified the Electoral Commission in your submission, and I just.
No, you're it. It's okay.
Yeah, so just for purity, the documents, your submission uses the term Electoral Commission, and we need to say public, we're not the Electoral Commission.
I realise that. Yeah.
Local Government Commission.
Yeah, thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Right, we're in your hands.
Good one, thank you. Oh, well, good morning and welcome from 47 Brooklands Road. This is us. We look out to the sea that way and to the bush that way. So I've got Neville here from Nelson Citizens Alliance, and he started the alliance up way back in April, and it seemed a long time ago, but it's only just last year. We're just a group of individuals, male, female, probably a little bit older, probably average age is 65 plus. We've got a few youngsters coming along too. And we're just interested in all the affairs of the city. We're good Nelson City citizens, basically. We're apolitical. Some of them will run a flag up every so often, but they're told to pull the flag down. And but we just generally want to support the council and all their initiatives around the city, and be with them. We're looking forward to the elections and having a look to see if there's going to be any new faces, old faces that have had a bit of time and they might want to move on. But it's it's a pretty good transitional time for us, and we're interested in backing it. So hence that's why we decided to have a good look at your system, and they threw me the baton to be in charge of it. I haven't done any of this before. My background's actually in education. I've had 54 years in education, so I'm going out the back door on that. But I have been involved with councils with things like Keep Christchurch Beautiful. I think I was on the Riccarton ward or something like that, but I've never been on a council, but I'm always interested in having a look. I want to acknowledge the people I've talked to by either phone or by email. And that's Deborah, hi, and Nikki, hi. And I know Judine through Sport Tasman, and I know Rachel through various bits and pieces. So around the city, and I acknowledge all the good work that you people do behind the scenes. It's not easy. I don't want to be a councillor. So,
okay, well, I'll introduce myself now. I'm Neville Mail. I'm the convener of the Nelson Citizens Alliance. Murray's outlined a little bit about what we're at, why we're here. My presentation to you this morning will be to do with how I feel the whole issue of the representation review was undertaken, because when you look at the number of submissions that were made and the timeline in which this was carried forward by council, there is no doubt that there is quite should we say, a shortfall in how the council managed to get the community input to it. But I'll talk a little bit about that later. I'll leave it to Murray now to talk more about the issues and the submissions that have been made to the Commission.
Thank you. I'm just looking at the faces there, and I just want to make just before I start into this, a small connection. Brendan, you're from Horowhenua, Levin Way?
Yep.
Yep. Now, I've had a lot of work in Horowhenua schools. I had about 3 or 4 of them where I've been working with the primary and the intermediates and so on, all that area. Sue, you're from Wellington? I think I had about 15 schools in Wellington that I was working with, and I've been doing that for about 15 years. Janie, you're from Timaru. I think I had 9 or 10 schools in the Timaru-Oamaru area. So I'm familiar with you, not your faces, but your territories. So operating out of Nelson, of course. It's nice always to come home to Nelson. Righto, thank you very much for this and the chance to do this appeal. Yes, we looked at what the council had done, and of course the Maori ward, which, by the way, Rachel, we are not opposed to in any way. And I think you did mention something about that, but it doesn't come into our submission. We've got nothing to do with that at all. And in fact, we probably quite like, we haven't even discussed it, but I would say most of us quite like the concept. We realised that the council did not want it originally, the Maori ward, but then with the government's action in July last year, they were basically told that they had to. So that triggered your system of a ward system. So I'm just going to kick it off on our notes. Now, you've all got our notes, as I take it? Yeah. Commissions, you've got them, okay. There's not much to it. I had a good look at your one at New Plymouth yesterday, and ours is pretty basic compared to the New Plymouth one that you ran last week, I think, or was it the week before? I'd just like to acknowledge a couple of statements right at the start off the website, of Nelson's website, where it states quite clearly that reviewing our representation arrangements to achieve a fair and effective representation in Nelson City. That's what we're about, a fair and effective representation. And I think Rachel acknowledged that before, and I'm sure that other councillors and Judine would do so as well. Oh, there goes my phone. Kill it. All right, it's gone now. Nikki, you're sitting there. Nikki, you actually had quite a nice statement in there in the website too, and you probably won't remember this, but I'm just going to bring it up because I think it's quite relevant to our whole discussion here. You've stated that it's an important consideration for the representation review to achieve a balanced and fair representation. It's kind of going back over the same territory for everyone in Nelson, regardless of the electoral role they have been on or happen to be on. And that's still following that same fairness and effectiveness theme. Rachel, you had a very good statement in there too. I know these things roll out all the time, but I thought this was pretty good. Mayor Rachel Reese encouraged people to take this opportunity to shape the way our local democracy works. And that's a wee bit of a thing, a wee bit of a scratchy piece amongst the Nelson Citizens Alliance. And we want to progress democracy, all of you on the council do. And we've been watching a little bit of an erosion of it. So we just thought that might be a good time, or at the election time, to make sure that that is pushed as much as we can. This is a chance to influence, Rachel says, how you are represented as a community, which is a key part of any democracy. Thank you, Rachel, but that's important. We know that. So that's kind of like the key plank, and you'll get a lot of that from us on it. Right, if you've got the information in front of you, I'm sorry we haven't got a PowerPoint or anything like that, but on page 4, I'd like you to flick over to page 4 if you've got it somewhere there. because that's a starting point for us. There was a survey on the ward and representation system sent out. Well, actually, I think there was a small notification in the Nelson paper and then also on the website. So we believe there wasn't really enough information out there. There wasn't enough sort of stirred up amongst the people. And people in Nelson, as everyone knows, are pretty hard to move and pretty hard to get into action. So they probably looked at this and said, ho hum. But anyway, after the people had had a good look at this and there was a survey that went back out, only 249 respondents come back. 52,000 people could have had a look at it. 249 come back. The vote for the councillor in a ward and a mayor was 27%, and vote for councillors in your ward, some councillors at large and a mayor, was 52%. Both of those statements are almost the same, you know. And, you know, if you total those, there's 79% want wards, want a ward system. And I hope the council has really looked at that hard, but there was only 249 people. And of those 249, most of them were over 65. In fact, Neville here made sure that a fair chunk of people got in there and voted for it. There are two or three other irrelevant pieces of collection of data in there, but I'm not going to run over those. So, you know, on that basis, we thought, oh, this is pretty thin. And any council would say that. I would have hoped that the council look at it, oh, this is not good enough. Well, Pat, you could have looked at this and said, hey, this is not good enough. We need to, come on, stir this up a bit and get some more involvement. But no, you didn't. So from that basis, what you did, you went back to yourselves and discussed it. You had a look at some other submissions and you discussed it at length and then finally decided to have a 2-ward system with the Maori Board. And you decided yourselves, you didn't get any further outside input. And we thought that was a bit odd. So if you turn over to page 5, you'll see the points to consider. Oh, turn him off. And you want to have a phone going, do we? The points to consider were that basically option 4A was selected and the councillors voted on that themselves. Well, it looked a pretty cosy option. Only 2 wards. But I tell you what, it's probably better than the system that you all got in on before. And Rachel mentioned, or someone mentioned it, that there's no one from Stoke at all in the current system, you know. Well, with at least 2 wards, you might be getting someone. But I believe, or we believe, that there's not a lot of accountability in only 2 wards. And there's not a lot of exposure to ratepayers, not enough people out there being exposed. So it doesn't quite fit the democratic decision-making and action by and on behalf of the community. There's not enough democracy in just a couple of wards. We believe it should be opened out far more. We believe that the option 4A will only ensure less accountability, less fairness, less democratic selection, and of course, less exposure of council candidates. There's not many to be exposed for the electorate. So we looked at that long and hard and thought, there's got to be better options. And so we studied option 6A, which we're down to. Tell me if I'm running out of time, but I know, Brendan, you did say we had a bit of time. We're still all right? Okay, so we're down to the final page where we've got our nitty gritty and what we want and what we've said, and it's page 7. Now, I just want to bring you down to the Nelson Citizens Alliance. It's about halfway down and it's the first block. And this is what we contend and we believe in. That both of these survey options are very similar that you had originally, your survey, and thus the results amalgamated would make 79% of the respondents really wanting a ward system. Well, 2 wards is not enough for the people out there. And I don't think they even understand about it. I really don't. The survey respondents largely indicated that they would like to see councillors in wards to ensure voters can get good visibility of them. They would be able to fairly select the best candidate standing. Now, when you've got 30 people on a list and you only tick 2 or 3 and you don't even know who they are, you don't get any idea of it. So that system's gone. But when you only get 2 wards, you still haven't got much to select from. We want people to stand up. We want them to be visible. They need to go to public meetings. We want people, and I'm just going to acknowledge Judine for a moment, because I like the way Judine gets involved in various sporting activities or different things, and she'll turn up somewhere. And we want councillors to do this. We want them to be visible. They can talk to people, see what needs to be done or not done, and bring it back to council meetings. So we want more people like this. And so our option with 4 wards would bring this in. This is what we believe fair and democratic action as indicated in the Local Electoral Act. And of course, it's expounded by Rachel and the team. So option 4A is selected by the current councillors. Seems a bit cosy, and not by an independent advisor panel. I thought that that's what would happen, but it doesn't seem to be. So that option 4A, obviously, I've said it before, less accountability, less fairness, less democratic selection, and so on. Our final piece is about exactly what we mean by option 6. It's greater exposure. So if you've got 4 wards and you've got 3 in each ward, those people are going to have to get out there. And if there's only, say, 4 or 5 in each ward, they're going to have to get out there and expose themselves. They're going to have to talk to people on street corners. They're going to have to come to the newspapers. They're going to have to get out there and show themselves. That's what we want. We want diversity. We don't want hidden. We don't want people hiding away and just hoping that they're going to tick me because I've been on there for 10 or 12 years. We want people to be exposed and to talk up the best things for our city. The best things for our city. We don't want them to talk about their political ideologies. That's just not what it's about. So, far greater opportunities for the public to view these people in action before they tick them off to be on the council. Greater possibilities for local connection. We've got to have local connection and access to people of the councillor's ward. If there's a little squabble, a little problem, you can ring up your local councillor. I've got one here that was on the council for years. She's just up the road from me. And I used to ring up and have a yarn about things and talk about it. She said, oh, yes, that's a good idea, or whatever. Well, no, we've talked about that. Throw that idea out. Well,
Murray, we've just given on that time, eh? We gave you a 5-minute head start, and I'm just concerned to make sure that no one has anything to say.
I go all day, so.
No,
but that's all right. Look, you can see where we're at, and we're really backing the greater diversity and greater representation. And we want to see a range of socioeconomic groups come in. Okay. No one from Stoke at the moment. Funny that. I wonder if there's anyone from the Victory area. No. So we need a greater diversity and a greater range of people from socio-economic groups. Last little point I want to make, Brendan, just the last point. I think I've got 2 or 3 seconds, I'm sure. This will provide lesser likelihood that block votes can be engineered by groups with national political affiliations. And currently, and I'm going to be honest with you, currently there are groups on all councils around New Zealand that have their political affiliations, and they tend to engineer the topics, the talking. And they don't do the best for their city. They've got to put that aside and get on with what they can go and raise their flag somewhere else. Ultimately, this will pave the way for openness and greater independence for decision-making at meetings. This will ensure councillors will focus, and this is our last statement, on what is best for Nelson. Okay. That's what we want. Thank you, Brendan, for the time. Thank you to the team. Appreciate it.
No problem. I just need to check in with Neville. Are you all good?
Yeah, look, all I wanted to say, obviously we've got limited time here, but all I wanted to say is that Mayor Rees made a very important statement when she talked about how critical this representational review is. And the great disappointment that many in the Alliance have is that it wasn't really given the profile that it should have been in terms of involving the ratepayer community. We know that there were a series of workshops held around about May or June of last year. That then resulted in a request via the our Nelson community newspaper for input to a survey. And then following that, in early August, a decision was made. Now, at that point, the main input, there'd been large input, obviously, by the councillors and staff at the workshops into what might be the shape or the options that could be considered. But really, when you think about the time frame for the whole exercise and how critical it is, as Mayor Rees has pointed out, there really wasn't a good enough uptake from the ratepayer community to have any input to this. And, you know, at the end of the day, we had to, as an alliance, get out there and get people to make submissions. Just the terminology about it being a representation review really switched off a lot of people. It didn't really explain that this was all about the future of how councils would be elected and how the sectors across the city might be best represented. So that's probably our biggest disappointment. I know it's a huge issue. Council have got a challenge in front of them all of the time, trying to get what they're doing across to the wider ratepayer community. But on this occasion, I feel that they should have done a lot better, perhaps given it a lot more publicity, had a lot more opportunity for ratepayer input. Unfortunately, when we look back on the record for this one, that didn't happen. So I guess that really is our major concern. Thank you for the opportunity of having input to that.
Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen. Look, I'm going to make one observation and then place a question for right of reply. And the observation on the public record is that no local authority in New Zealand have had an easy run with the impact of COVID. And I do think that we need to respect that as local authorities have determined how best they engage with their communities, the public hall meetings of old just couldn't happen. So councils around the country have had to find new initiatives and new ways of engaging. So that leads me into my question for the right of reply, because the strongest element of your submission is essentially what was the level of it? How did the local authority engage with its community? And as a consequence, you know, there's a couple of hundred responses. You would have liked to have seen a couple of thousand, I think. So the guts of the question is that I'd like to place back for the right of reply for the commissioners to understand. And I do need to say, you know, we've read everything. We've got a good idea, but for the record, can you just give us a rundown on what it is that you did to engage with the community, to give them that opportunity to respond, factoring in those impositions of COVID that impacted on how you would go about that. So that's in the right of reply to come back after we've had a break. I need to check with fellow commissioners. Are there any other questions that you would like to place on the record before we break? You're both comfortable? Oh, Commissioner Piper.
Thank you. Murray and Neville, thank you for your presentation. I've got a couple or three questions. What do you mean by the erosion of democracy?
Well, we've been watching it over the last wee while, the last 2 or 3 years, and I think Brendan said something about blaming some of the processes on the COVID situation, but there's a lot of things you can do in making things open, and you don't have to be visible and you don't have to go out and stand on street corners or anything, but it can come through a whole range of other activities and not just a little wee piece of blue paper that comes out every so often that people can have. And the openness of democracy, it's everywhere, and it starts right at the top level. We can see that it's going, and we see a protest there at the moment, and it's basically pushing for the same sort of thing. And I think this is the greatest challenge going on at the moment for not only local authorities, but in national authorities, but local authorities, is giving people lots of say in things. And this is the realm we're in. I mean, it's not 20 or 30 years ago where councillors got put onto a council, made a decision, and this is what it is, ho-hum. Today, people want to know. They want to find out a bit more. Young people are not engaged. We've got a few that have arrived along to our scene and they're in their 35s.
Yeah, no, I understand.
They're
what you're
not
saying.
engaged. They don't know what's happening. And we say, well, look, I'm sorry, we can't. We're trying to dig over ourselves for you. So we need to do something about this. And I think the council
But who's the we here? Is it the council? Or is it,
no.
or the
Well, when I
citizens?
say we, a generalist we, that's the council, it's the people of the ratepayers. I mean, we're a one group that may be asking questions, but there's a lot of people, as you know, sit behind the scenes and don't come out and ask any questions about anything. But they moan over the teacups. But
what's your next? Just can we go to the next question?
How many members have you got?
Our official base is 280 members, and we have at least 2,000 supporters.
Okay. What can you just by the by, is it only ratepayers who vote in Nelson? Does anybody else vote besides ratepayers?
You mean
you'll know.
You mean for this particular issue?
For council?
No, it's a ratepayer vote.
No,
it's not. It's a citizen vote, by the by. Everybody over 18 who's on the roll is entitled to vote.
Okay.
On either one of the rolls.
Well, it was a pretty poor turnout at 240 in the survey to respond.
Okay.
Do the people know about that?
No, I'm talking about your terminology. But look, let's cut to the chase. How in your view, will option 6 enhance effective representation?
Well, we've laid it out. It's quite clear. You have a look at page 7. It outlines it very clearly. All the steps are there. If you can see, there's got to be more people standing. There's got to be a diverse range of people standing so that people can have a good look at them and decide on who they want for their council for this town.
Okay. No, I understand.
And that's so important.
I
Okay,
agree.
we're old dogs and going out the other end, but we want to see some youth come through. So do other people.
But again, how does option 6 enhance it?
Well, it gives more
Why is
opportunity.
it a better option than any of the other options?
Well, it's far better than having only 2 wards. 2 wards splits this town in 2, and it goes way out into the country where there's hardly anyone, and then there's a few inside the town and a few out towards Richmond where it cuts itself off again. At least with 4 wards, you've got 4 different areas where people can look and say, oh, look, I live in this area. These are the things I want to have happen. I think I'll get on the council and see what will happen. And what's wrong with that? That's great. That's what we want. We want participation. It's so important.
Okay. No, thank you. That's helpful.
I'm a bit passionate about it, but I think it's pretty important.
Yeah.
Okay, Commissioner Anea.
So something that you'll be aware, because you've done a bit of a study on it now, Murray, is that communities of interest are really important in effective representation. So your option, are there 4 really strong communities of interest that would make up those 4 wards?
Perhaps I can answer that, Commissioner. Yeah, we certainly, I mean, part of our motivation and our original thinking behind the idea of 4 wards was exactly for that reason, that we believe that we do have a city with distinct communities of interest in it. And that really was one of the key factors in our recommending that there should be 4 wards. And when you look at it, Murray's just touched on it briefly, is that, you know, we're spread across a number of suburbs, a central city zone, and on the periphery of the city, we've got quite large rural people living in the semi-rural type environment. So a 4-ward situation would give those distinct communities of interest good representation at the council table.
Okay, thank you.
Just one other quick one. Often when we have these hearings, we hear the absolute opposite of what you are saying. People are saying they want to be able to vote for others rather than just in their ward, because they're getting the same people over and over again who, just let me finish my question. So this is what we're hearing, and I'm really interested to see how you think this wouldn't happen in your areas. But a lot of areas you get the same councillors putting their hands up, and once they get on council, they end up being elected over and over again, and other people don't stand against them. So people have said to us, we like the idea of being able to have some at large as well, because not only do we relate to our own community of interest, but we also relate to the whole of Nelson as the place that we live. So I'm really interested in your opinion of why that won't happen in Nelson.
Well, that's why we strongly went for the 4 wards, so that people could come out and be seen. People could have a shot at doing this. Look, there's 2 or 3 bow waves in front of a lot of people. If you go to try and get young people who are already in a good job earning 80 to 100,000 something, you think they really wanted to spend time on a council unless they have another job? No, and that's a bow wave. The other bow wave, and the commissioners, you will know better, and so will Rachel know better than what we do, but the Local Government Act's about to be tipped upside down. Well, for all what we're doing here and all the 43 other councils that you've interviewed and all what you're doing may just come to nothing. We know that, but at least we're trying to move things along locally until such time it does get tipped upside down. So, no, we believe strongly in making sure that we can get, and we will assist it. And I hope other groups will come out and assist getting people out there to get up and be represented. What we did not like is seeing the great tick list where half a dozen of the good old stalwarts, what you mentioned, Janie, keep on getting ticked, and they go along and it's just ho-hum, business as usual. We want some new blood. We want some freshness. We want our city to go forward, not backwards.
Okay.
Thank
Stagnate.
you.
Thank you.
Right. So one last point for the right of reply, Mayor Rachel, is this commentary around the distinct communities of interest. It will be useful in the right of reply to understand how you've been persuaded to settle where you have, compared to the observation that the submitters are suggesting there are distinct communities of interest and they could be better represented by a 4-ward system. We'd like to hear some commentary in that space. So look, just bear with me. Right, can I suggest we take a break? And to give you a respectful amount of time for the right of reply. So it's, what is it now, 7 minutes past. We can either come back at 10:30 or 10:45. If you want 11 o'clock, we can do that. Just give me a sense of what feels comfortable from your end. I'll just, Commissioner Piper.
Sorry, Brendan, look, there was one other question for the Alliance. Mayor Rees discussed at some length the issue of proportionality of votes.
Yes.
And I got the impression that it was a significant issue that the council took into account. So I wondered what your views, Murray and Neville, are, whether you've got any commentary to add to that.
The proportionality of votes in what way? What do you?
Well, if you have a ward system, Māori members of the
Māori ward is already a fait accompli.
Hold on, Murray. Just let Commissioner ask the question.
Okay.
No. If you have a proportion, the proportionality that the Mayor was discussing earlier is that, for the sort of simplest example is if you had a if you had at large that Māori members of the Māori electorate population who vote will only have 2 votes. But if there was 4 wards, the general electoral population would have 4.
No.
Any thoughts on all that?
They don't get 4 votes. They only get 1 vote and vote for a mayor. They can't, people who vote can't go and vote for every person in every ward.
Okay. All right. That answer will do.
They can't.
You misunderstood.
And the Maori electorate have their own electorate, and they, out of the 7 or 8 iwi that we've got, will already have worked, well, hopefully will have worked out who their delegate to the council is going to be. So they've done that, and they can vote for the mayor as well. Or if they
They've got
don't
2
want the
votes.
Maori roll and they don't wish to do that, they can vote for anything, any person in the ward. So they've got plenty of options.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay,
Yeah,
rightio.
thank you.
So
I just
look,
wanted some commentary. Thank you.
we'll conclude here. So there's 2 things that we're going to conclude just before we all sign off. One is the first thing we do is we thank Murray and Neville for your participation. And Penny, you'll do whatever you need to do from there in terms of technology, because that's beyond me. So I'll leave you to sort that out. We need to determine when we're going to come back for the right of reply and what feels comfortable, guys. Do you need an hour, half an hour, 20 minutes? Just give me some idea.
Thank you, Chair. I think we'll, I think probably we'll need
10:45, half an hour?
I think 10:45 would be good. That will just allow us to have a little break as well as doing the work that we need to do to prepare for you.
Yeah. Are we okay with that? Rightio. So we're going to adjourn now. We'll reconvene at 10:45. Now, Penny will just give us some rundown on what happens technologically from here. And then commissioners will when we leave, we'll then ring in on our other line. Yeah.
So just to let everybody know, we keep the live stream running, but we just let everybody know that it's on a break. So you can either stay logged on, or if you want to have a separate offline Zoom discussion to get your right of reply in order, feel free to leave the meeting. And whenever you pop back in, just use the same way that you did to get here this morning, and I can bring you back into the meeting. So it's entirely up to you. If you just want to stay sitting there, if you just pop your video off and pop yourselves on mute, that's fine too. Up to you, whichever works on your side.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I think what we'll do from our end is we will come off, and I'm sure that any moment now, if it's not already in my diary, there will be a little link for us to join on for a separate Zoom, and then we'll come back.
Okay.
Lovely. All right, that's great. Thank you very much.
So Penny, for us, do we leave as well?
No, you can just stay there, Janie. Same usual drill for you. Just pop yourself on mute and turn your video off.
Yeah, but I thought,
We're ringing in.
We're ringing in. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, Brendan.
Hey,
Oh, are you happy for me to start bringing everybody back in?
yeah, I think so. Yeah, yeah. Hey, Donald, just by chance, have you got a record of the questions, of each of the questions? Did you note them down? Yeah.
Yeah, there's just two right
Okay.
reply questions.
Cool.
So one was about community engagement, what
Yeah.
they did, and the other was about the distinctiveness of the community's interest. Yeah.
I've got it here. That's good. Just making sure. Cool. Okay. Rachel, we've never been able to keep strictly to time on any of these sessions, and it's very, very difficult. So I know we're going to go over from what we've got booked in your diary, but where are we? We shouldn't be too bad.
We're here to help, Brendan, so we'll do everything we can to try and we'll keep our diaries in order.
We're all good. So, right, our team's here. Where's yours?
Hopefully they're on their way.
That's a bit harsh, but
No, it's all right. I'm only joking. It's all right.
He is harsh. He wasn't joking.
thank you, Sue. I thought so too. Yes.
Plenty of time. We're on live stream, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Always.
This is for public consumption. I've just read a really interesting article on the Spin-Off about all the groups that are stopping Wellington Girls College and other colleges from opening today. It's quite an interesting read. Have a look.
I can see that Judine is in the attendees list. I'm not sure if she's wanting to come back in or not. I have pushed the buttons at this end. So Judine, over to you.
Penny, she's texted to say that here she comes now. Okay.
Yeah, I was in the waiting room. I just needed someone to let me in. Thank you.
Great technology. So,
I think that means we've got everybody.
We've got everybody. I think we have. Yeah, we have. And right on the button at 10:45. So we'll reconvene and just remind ourselves that we've now had we've now provided the opportunity for council to go away and prepare the right of reply. So we'll pass back to you now for that response, Mayor Rees.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You had some questions for us, and I'm going to hand across to Deborah to respond to the questions around how do we promote the representation review to our community, and also to just discuss the matter of communities of interest.
Perfect. Thank you.
Kia ora koutou. Taking the first point that was raised in relation to promotion to the community first. So the community survey that was referenced by the appellant was a form of pre-engagement that we undertook. That was in mid-June to mid-July. It was a little bit later than would ordinarily be the case, and that's because of the change in legislation in relation to Māori wards. And so that adjusted our time frame somewhat with the reconsideration of that. We had 253 responses to that, a reasonable spread from the community in terms of the demographic. Not as many as we'd hoped, it's true, but we did feel that it gave a good idea of a variety of views in the community. And I'll come back to that community survey with reference to the communities of interest question. So just moving on in terms of the promotion. As pointed out previously, Council then considered that or the results from that amongst a number of factors in its initial proposal. The initial proposal was publicly notified in mid-August, and we did our best to give as much longer than the statutory timeframe as we could for that initial proposal feedback period. Unfortunately, our timeframe did coincide with an unexpected COVID lockdown, so we did make some adjustments to our promotion in the ways that people could provide feedback and advised of that partway through. But in terms of promotional activities, just to give you a quick overview of the types of things that were undertaken. So we did prepare a media release, and I have to note that separate to our own proactive work with the media, our local newspapers were wonderful in taking up this particular topic of their own accord and preparing articles and information pieces and working with our communications team to make sure that they were getting the information correct with it, for the community. So we really appreciated the efforts there. There were articles in multiple editions of Our Nelson, which is Council's information piece itself, a series of social media posts, and we provided information packs to the community, both online. We had intended that they would be available in person through our libraries, but that was somewhat stymied. But people could call us, email us, or access those online themselves if they wished. So we were able to send things out via post if need be. And again, we had scheduled regular drop-in in-person sessions originally throughout that time. We had to make some adjustments on that front, but we advised that people were very welcome to call us, to email us, to reach out, via social media comment if that's the way that they preferred. And I did receive queries from the community via primarily email, it has to be said, but also phone calls. So that option was taken up over that period of time. And yeah, I think I've touched on the fact that we actually provided an updated version of the public notice itself due to the COVID lockdown, re-advertising and re-notifying the various ways that people could get in touch with us. So that's our sort of promotion side of things.
Thank you.
With your leave, if you're happy for me to move on to the communities of interest comments. Thank you. So I've touched on our pre-engagement survey that took place starting around mid-June. We did get, so we were asking a number of questions essentially around communities of interest there, how many elected members people felt was about right for Nelson, with preferences for ward only or any at-large councillors. So starting to ask those questions early. In terms of the communities of interest questions, we were interested in where they lived and also areas that they identified with. And the results came back really strongly that people identified with Nelson first, but secondly, Stoke and Tahunanui were a very strong, excuse me, result coming through, and that reflected feedback that had been received over a number of years by elected members on the different councils that Stoke primarily, but Tahunanui area as well, were looking for some representation of some form on council. So that feedback was obviously considered amongst other factors by council when it was considering its initial proposal. Just in terms of communities of interest, you'll be aware that that's interesting for Nelson, as the Mayor touched on early on. We have been in at-large council, it's actually been for about 30 years. And the communities of interest are fairly strongly geographic, but certainly not exclusively. as we've seen in some of the feedback that's come through, particularly for Stoke and Te Huna-Nui, that is for the people that live there. They do often tend to shop there. Their children might go to school there as well, as opposed to other areas of the city. There are sports facilities and other recreational activities. So people that live in those types of areas do tend to socialise and meet some of their other requirements in those areas, while we note that Nelson is very small overall geographically, and there is quite a lot of travel, across the city generally. We do know that Stoke and Te Huna-Nui can be quite distinct in those areas, and so that's part of where council landed in terms of the 2 wards. 4 wards, there are some geographic distinctions in terms of roadways. It's less strong, and it does raise the challenge in that it would split the Stoke, which is one of the areas that was felt particularly important to keep distinct. Thank you, Mayor Rees.
Thank you, Deborah. And I just want to acknowledge Deborah. Deborah has an absolute passion for democracy, work that she's doing, and I am incredibly grateful to have for us to have a wonderful officer who actually has a real passion for this, for what we've been doing. We've made it as elected members as interesting as we possibly can, and I'll come back just to focus on a couple of points that I want to make in the right of reply in a moment. One of the issues in terms of communities of interest that I just want to amplify is that geographic location is one factor, but actually there are many more. And as we look at communities of interest, whether it is around our rangatahi and encouraging younger people to participate in democracy, those elected at large seats around the table can be quite important for representing other communities of interest, not just the geographic and the ward process. We are a unitary council, so we have a broad church of functions and responsibilities to perform. And again, the opportunity for the elected at large seats may be very useful in that unitary role, thinking about some of our big regional functions and the importance, particularly as we go through freshwater reforms, as we go through significant legislation reform around the future planning documents. So there's some real opportunities, I think, to get that diversity. In terms of the proportionality issues, and I just want to come back to that, on the 4 ward system, if you're a statistician, you'd say that was slightly fairer. But if you're operating in practice and you're actually thinking about he tangata, the people, then the opportunity to vote for more people to represent you at the council table was reflected better by the 2 ward system with the elected at large. So that is really is that on both they met the fairness test. And what we did know is that as we introduced the Māori ward, we had to have some kind of ward system. So Deborah's been working very closely with our electoral provider, who has raised no concerns at all about the model that we have settled on. I think the final comments would be, listening to the appellant, I hear them raise that concern about the fact that elected members are given the task of creating a system for future elections, and whether that is the right thing to do or not, or whether there should be an independent body. The first thing I'd say is that the elected members have to, in law, make these decisions. And to be perfectly honest, I think there would be, I think the level of engagement, of bravery, of passion for diversity that our council has shown is actually something to be celebrated. And it's certainly not a matter of having taken an option that was going to be around status quo. I'm really proud of our council. We are, in the last election, in our community elected a councillor who was under the age of 20. We have, in terms of gender diversity, we have 7 women and 6 men on our council. We have, but what we don't have is we don't have the cultural diversity that reflects our community. And I'm hoping through this election system that we may be able to see some of those issues actually come to the fore as we look at the election result. Certainly, in terms of if you were saying, I'll pick a safe option so that you get returned to council after the 2022 election, I think embarking on STV voting on Māori ward and wards and electorate large mix wouldn't be seen as taking a safe return me to and give me the guaranteed leave pass to come back to sit around the council table. I think that's genuinely based on one of respecting the value and importance of diversity. To be honest, and I did say this in our breakout room, and I'll say it right here, I don't think they could have done any more to liven this election up unless they'd decided to introduce fluoride at the same time. So in terms of a really robust election, I think we're up for we're up for that. In terms of the debate, I just want to come back and say one of the things that I enjoy the most at council is when we have a robust debate, and that's a good day for me. I really enjoy that. There was absolutely no rubber stamping. There was a fully engaged council in that debate. And a tight decision to me is actually, that and the test that went on and the quality of the debate was really strong. So for me, it was a very good day at work. We exercised our responsibility well, and as I said, I can see no reason to overturn the council's decision. Mr. Chair, I thank you very much for the opportunity for the right of reply.
Brilliant. Okay, so thank you for that, Mayor Rees, and Deborah, thank you for the detail that you provided to those two questions. So that we now reach the point of conclusion. We've heard from all parties, and we understand now that the Commission has a responsibility to deliberate, which we'll do at the conclusion of the session, and we have a responsibility to have all of our decisions made and announced by the 10th of April. So somewhere between this day and then, that will be resolved. You'd appreciate there's quite a number of councils through this process. The workload is significant. Just as we prepare to conclude, I do want to pass thanks to you, Mayor Rees, and Pat as CEO, back to your team. Very well prepared. Thank you for the background work that's been going on, working with our team in terms of the technology to ensure we had a fair and fully engaged process. It's not easy, but I'm grateful for the work that's gone on in the background. The information you've provided through to us is of sufficient detail for it to allow us to make the sorts of decisions that are important. And I just want to make that acknowledgement on the record and say thank you. We at the Commission have a karakia that we'll close on, and once we've hit our karakia, we'll just all chime out, and commissioners know to chime back in on the next Zoom after this. So we'll close with our karakia. The karakia is unahia. Unahia, unahia, unahia te uru tapunui. Kia wātia, kia mama, te nākau. Te tinana, te wairora, i te ara takatu. Koe rā e rongu. Whakaria ake kia runga. Kia wātia, kia wātia. E rā, kia wātia. Hupai mare.